let's go through the teams of the NFC East. We did this yesterday with the AFC East. Each one, what do they have to get in the draft? Let's start with the Cowboys. They cannot leave this draft without a what, Chris?
I think the position I look at more than anything would probably be a safety. It's a position they've been trying to fill for a long time. Now, I don't know if that's something they take in the first round. Okay, Mike. I don't know if, I'm not done evaluating safeties to know if there's going to be a guy there to be taken for them in the first round. But nonetheless, where they sit in the second, third, I look at that as being, safety, certainly another pass rusher, which is very valued there. But I think safety more than anything, with Jeff Heath getting up there in age, Xavier Woods is a good safety, but I think, a guy that they probably look at to go, I don't know how long of a career he can be as a starter here. Yeah, I think a safety position is one I look at for the Dallas Cowboys that's a true need for their football team.
And I was going to say corner because Byron Jones left via free agency for the Dolphins. You got to replace him. But that offensive line, they spend so much time, they spend so many first-round draft picks in an effort to turn that offensive line into a powerhouse. And now you've got to a point where Tyron Smith, maybe not as dominant as he used to be. Travis Frederick retires. Maybe they just need to get a new center. I know Joe Looney's going to take over. They re-signed him, but Travis Frederick was a guy they believed in. He was a perennial Pro Bowler, and we've talked in the past how important that position is on the offensive line. We've seen that offensive line go from being the unquestioned best in the NFL to, maybe it's in the upper half of the pack now. They need to get it back to where it was if they want to get the most out of the offense. So I think they need to come out of this with a great offensive lineman, ideally a replacement for Travis Frederick.
Well, they're interesting to me. Out of all the teams here in the NFC East, I think all the other three teams that we'll talk about here in a second have one truly glaring need. This offseason and free agency, they lost Robert Quinn. That was a huge loss to them on the edge of their defense. So that's where I'm torn. And then also you look at it and go, okay, who's going to be that third receiver for the Dallas Cowboys this year too? So your corner thing is not wrong. I'm with you. They have some younger guys who have played in the slot or maybe a little unproven on the outside other than Chidobe Awuzie, who's really, really good. So that's a real thing. Yes, your offensive line thoughts, not bad either. Pass rusher, I look at that. So the Cowboys, they do have some true positional needs going into this draft. For a team that's still got a lot of talent, there's a few holes to be filled for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. You don't think about it much with the Cowboys because we assume that they haven't had to do much reloading or retooling, but they do. They really do.
They do.
All the talk about Dak Prescott keeping Amari Cooper. They signed Ezekiel Elliott. The big-name players are there. But the guys who become a key part of the foundation of being successful, some of those guys are gone, and they're going to have to replace them. All right, the Eagles cannot leave the 2020 draft without what, Chris?
Well, this is easy. It's wide receiver. I mean, they have to get a wide receiver. I mean, Nelson Aguilar's gone. Alshon Jeffrey's getting up there in age. He was hurt last year. Deshaun Jackson, yes, he could still run, but he's getting up there in age and was hurt last year. So, one, they need some talent at the position. Two, they need a guy, for depth at the position. And they can't count on Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson at this age of their career to play a 16 game full season. I think that's a very real thing. And we talked about this last week and at the Combine. Howie Roseman told us one of the big things in this offseason was going to be the ability to support Carson Wentz with some weapons around him. They've yet to really do that. So I would think during the draft, running backs, wide receivers are going to be a part of their game plan for sure, but wide receiver especially, they need to find a go-to young receiver for Carson Wentz and that Eagles offense.
And all I'll add to that is it's got to be a fast receiver. It's got to be somebody who can take the top off the defense, stretch the defense out, and open up everything underneath. Deshaun Jackson was that guy really for one game last year. And it was a huge impact. They were down double digits to Washington week one, and all of a sudden, and Carson Wentz told me this after the game, they hit one to Deshaun Jackson. It changed everything. You need that guy who can be the home run threat, and I don't think you can count on Deshaun Jackson being that threat. If he is this year, great, but you need somebody else who becomes that guy down the road, much like the way they found Deshaun Jackson all those years ago. Giants can't leave the draft without what, Chris?
Offensive tackle. I mean, that's an easy. It's slam dunk. I mean, not again. I don't know if they got to take him at number 4. They might be able to take him in the second round. But I look at the New York Giants and go, all right, Nate Solder, just like we talked about with the Eagles. Yeah, he's still a good player, but he's not great. He's getting up there in age. You got to start thinking about replacing him. They got some journeymen at right tackle and some unproven commodities there. So to me, that is the no-brainer. I would think with one of the first 2 picks the Giants have in the draft, they are going to go offensive tackle. I would think that is. And the Giants at number 4, Mike, they might not look at any offensive tackle being worthy of the number 4 pick. I don't know. They would be an ultimate trade down team I would look at right now to think, if somebody's interested in quarterbacks or the way their team's built, they could certainly trade down if they got a bunch of offensive tackles very closely graded.
Yeah, what's the Dave Gettleman term? The hog mollies? They need some hog mollies.
Hog mollies.
They need them on both sides of the line. They need to get back to the point where they have a great defensive line and a great offensive line. That, all due respect to Eli Manning, they won those Super Bowls in 2007, 2011 because they had a great offensive line, great defensive line, continuity on the offensive side of the ball, and disruption on the defensive side of the ball. That's what they need to get back to. So I agree with you there. All right, Washington.
And Mike, one last thing with the Giants. If you want Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones, your 2 top 6 picks of the last 2 drafts, to be really successful, you better help them, get some holes and pass protection. So you want to protect those investments. Sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely. Washington cannot leave the draft without what, Chris?
They're like the Philadelphia Eagles, the wide receiver position. There's just not enough there. And again, not that they have to, take a first. You don't have to draft a first-round wide receiver. As we saw, Terry McLaurin last year was a 3rd or a 4th-round pick for the Washington Redskins. He's a superstar. But nonetheless, if you want the Dwayne Haskins experiment and era to get off on the right foot, you got to put some more weapons around him. Again, there's not really talented tight ends on the roster at this point. Running backs is a big question mark, so there's holes to be filled there. It's Adrian Peterson, and he's up there in age. But wide receiver, other than Terry McLaurin, tell me somebody you're even slightly concerned about really as a dangerous aspect on that Redskins offense. So that would be the first one I would look at if I'm a Redskins front office man.
I agree with you there. And if you want to get the most out of Dwayne Haskins, you got to give him some protection. They need to resolve the Trent Williams situation once and for all, get what they can for him, and get another left tackle. Start that process over, reset at that position, quit being stubborn about Trent Williams, move on from him, and find somebody else. Otherwise, it doesn't matter who you have at receiver if your quarterback is running for his life all day long, Chris.
Yeah, no, it does not. You're exactly right. So, you look at the Redskins, there's a lot of positive things. Their defensive line, legit. They got some people there. They might have a chance, Of course, they're sitting there right now where you're going to go, they're going to have Chase Young with Montez Sweat, who they drafted in the 1st round last year, and then the 2 Alabama boys in the middle who are both 1st-round picks. I mean, holy crap, that'll be some defensive line. It'll be one of the more talented ones in all of football. But, yeah, the Redskins, they need to find some weapons on the offensive side of the ball and become more of an explosive offense.
And one thing that benefits Washington, they have a new coach in Ron Rivera who has been there and done that with no offseason program. His first year with the Panthers, there was nothing until training camp. So not that they were great right away, but they laid the foundation for greatness, and he may be in a great position to help them get the most out of whoever they find in the draft.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.